So, good morning all, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar, which is all about data security in Microsoft 365. It's actually a series, so you may have already seen our Copilot webinar series. We're now 2 episodes through that, with another one planned. But this new series is about security. We've called it Secure by Design. And this first part is going to focus on your data security within Microsoft 365. And I'm pleased to say I'm joined by Iain, who's our expert in this area. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
So Iain's a new guest in our webinar series. So yeah, great to have more people on board. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Iain on this topic today. So Iain, what are we going to cover?
So yeah, today, before looking at the end goal or the end solutions, we need to understand what it is we're actually trying to achieve. So understanding how digital transformation and the modern ways of working can introduce the vulnerabilities is important. We've got some examples, common scenarios that highlight both how malicious and inadvertent actions can actually pose risks as well. We look at how Microsoft Purview can help mitigate those risks, along with some guidance on how to get started.
Brilliant. And it's a very kind of topical, lots going on in the news, isn't there, around cyber attacks and that kind of thing. So we'll be touching on some of that as we go through. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask on the topic, we'd love to hear from you. There's a control panel, should be on your right-hand side. If you'd like to ask any questions, we'll answer those either towards the end or as they crop up, depending on what the questions might be. So without further ado, let's make a start. I just wanted to start by introducing Intelligy for those of you that don't know us. We're a Microsoft partner. We've been around a long time, so it's our 30th year actually in business, so our 30th anniversary this year. And you can see our accreditations from Microsoft on the right-hand side there. Lots of different specialisms across all sorts of different technologies within Microsoft 365. And on the left-hand side are the different practice areas our organisation is split into. So Iain, obviously the most important one there, cloud platform and security, is yours. Currently 5th in the list. I don't know why you're not top, because strictly speaking, by alphabetical order, you should be top, shouldn't you? Maybe depending on your performance today, we might maybe promote you up to 3rd or 4th in the list. We'll see how you get on.
We'll have some conversation.
The other practices, just to kind of talk you through some of our other areas of business. So those top 3, I suppose, you could say are the modern work practices as defined by Microsoft. So teamwork and employee experience is all about collaboration tools, intranets, Teams, Microsoft Viva, all of those kind of tools to help you work better. Our knowledge and information practice is all about governance and your information architecture. So that practice is very much looking at your data and your structure of your data. And then we've got experts here in content AI that will look at how your content is processed and surfaced using the latest AI tools. Our business applications and insights team, 2 parts to that, both kind of low code using Power Platform, and we can also do custom development as well within that team. And then lastly, our managed service and support function is about providing ongoing support, continued improvement, licensing for Microsoft technologies as well. So as you can see, really broad offering, and we're really passionate about what we do. So let's maybe start by looking at the data, set the scene for us, Iain. What's going on there in the outside world?
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, let's start with some stats. Everyone enjoys a statistic. Essentially, it doesn't matter if you're 10 people or 10,000 people these days, everyone is a target. Statistically, I think 83% of us will experience some sort of data breach at some point. It's also a common perception that risks around data security are from external actors, but in fact 20% of data breaches are caused by people who already have access to that data. And it doesn't have to be malicious. Sometimes people make mistakes or don't realize the impact of their actions as well. Another recent statistic, unsurprisingly, around the use of Gen AI, whether it's rolling out Copilot across the organization or use of third-party models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, etc. The associated risks for data security are, understandably, increasing concerns for a lot of organizations.
Great, thank you. And there's a siren going on in the background, which hopefully you can't hear, but just to explain that if there's a strange noise. Yeah, I mentioned this is very topical at the moment. You probably can't have avoided the news around Co-op and M&S recently. Yeah, I saw the latest news on M&S this week was, I think that's estimated to be costing them £300 million, and online shopping not going to be available till July. So you can see the impact that security and threats around these cyber attacks can really have. But there's loads of other examples besides, aren't there? So this was taken all from the BBC website, where there's a cyber attack category of news now. So yeah, lots going on within NHS software providers being fined £3 million, councils losing hundreds of thousands of pounds due to problems that they've been having. We can't have a webinar right now without mentioning AI, of course. I know that Samsung example has been used a lot, but it's a really good example when Iain comes to talk later about how using AI tools can potentially be a way of leaking your data, leaking information to the outside world. That's a good example and worth bearing in mind when we get to that point in the presentation. And we'll be coming back to some of these examples in future parts of this series as well, I'm sure. But I suppose we should start by looking at why those vulnerabilities are so prevalent at the moment. What's going on?
Yeah, so it's down to the way we interact with the data. I mean, this slide says traditional borders. We say traditional borders, but the modern ways of working have been in play for over a decade. So it's not really anything new. Those traditional borders of firewalls, proxies, and things like that, but largely redundant in the world where we work primarily with cloud platforms and SaaS applications. This way of working has resulted in a landscape that's fragmented for data and content, and that introduces risk. We speak to a number of organisations that know they have sensitive or business critical data, but would be hard pushed to tell you where it all is. Another interesting statistic is around the dark data. Typically around 93% of data owned by an organisation is redundant, obsolete, trivial, or ROT for short, which means it's not actively used, or it's not any actual use to anyone if they do find it. This makes it quite hard to protect that data and manage effectively or comply with any regulatory requirements that you may need to uphold as well. So effectively, we need to reduce that surface area, removing the data sprawl and enabling more effective protection against leaks or breaches. Procrastination is not your friend here either. With year-on-year growth trends, the amount of information and data doubles. That's across emails, messages, shared storage, and various cloud apps and things that people are using these days. For context, there are roughly around 402 million terabytes of data generated every day. 376 billion emails are sent each day. There's some ridiculous numbers for the global population. But I think what we can take from that is that every organisation will experience higher and higher data volumes, and we need to rethink how we manage and protect it appropriately.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling numbers, isn't it? I'm guessing that's growing year on year, isn't it? Obviously, the population's growing, the working population's growing, more and more devices, more and more systems, more and more people, I guess, sending lots of different things.
Yeah, indeed. So, yeah, I think, as I said, we hear from organisations that know they have sensitive information, but they don't know where it is or where to find it. There's obviously a number of environments that are in play as well, whether it's on-prem, in the cloud, or not just Microsoft. There are a lot of SaaS applications that people use these days. And the thing on everyone's lips at the moment, as you mentioned earlier, was around how to prepare and secure your information for the use of Gen AI.
Yeah, I'm going to make myself sound really old now, but when I think back to the start of my career, I accessed one computer, which was in the office, one file server where everything lived, and that was it really. That was all I ever did. And fast forward to now, I've got at least 3 devices that I access regularly. I've got cloud storage, both personally and at work. I've got different systems. 20 or so cloud apps probably that I'm accessing on a regular basis. So yeah, I suppose you can see how easy or how possible that might be to then cause leakages and problems using those tools.
Yeah, and people are used to having these tools available in their personal lives to communicate with family, friends, etc. So there's an expectation that the same level of flexibility is then available in the workplace as well. So these tools are required. It makes people more productive.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, they do introduce risk there.
Yeah, the lines are a bit blurred as well, aren't they, between your personal OneDrive and your OneDrive in the office or office for work?
It shouldn't be, but
Yeah.
that is often the case. And yeah, as I said, we rely on these platforms like Microsoft 365 being available anytime, anywhere. So we have to understand that incidents can happen anytime, anywhere as well. Sometimes it's external risks. For example, a user falls for a phishing attack, which can lead to compromised credentials, in turn could lead to data compromise. More likely, that data is at risk inside the organization, maybe on purpose, but again, more likely by accident. An example there, if a user copies data to USB drive or personal storage, that's effectively data theft. If a user shares sensitive data with Gen AI services, then that's data leakage. If a user deletes data before leaving the organization, that's data sabotage. So these are the sorts of things that we need to understand, get a grip of, and be able to protect ourselves from. So we have our first scenario here. This is actually based on a real world situation in the US a few years ago. We have Jane. She held a high profile positions at two large companies. Using that position, she was able to collect and actually attempt to steal proprietary information. Company A did have some DLP protection, but she was determined and found a loophole using her personal storage account, like you mentioned earlier. She then used a device at a different company, Company B, that didn't have any measures in place and was able to copy that sensitive information to an external drive. It didn't go unnoticed by her colleagues and she had to try and cover her tracks, but ultimately in the end she was terminated from both companies and her hard drives were submitted as evidence. So what was she trying to gain? Effectively, she planned to share trade secrets with a foreign corporate partner and start her own company. Together, they received millions of dollars in grants from foreign governments for the actions that actually led to her conviction. In the end, she was convicted of conspiracy to commit economic espionage, wire fraud, possession of stolen trade secrets, and the indictment alleged that the information that she was attempting to steal would have cost those companies over $100 million to develop.
Wow. Big numbers.
Yeah. So a couple more examples here. I like that phrase, data doesn't move itself, people move data. I think that's quite a relevant one just to remember there. There's always a human involved when it comes to these things. So yeah. This top example is of data exposure, data leakage, and data hoarding, all through inadvertent actions. User A receives some exciting information via email. We've all got it and we want to share that excitement with our colleagues. She shares the file through Teams, uploads it to personal storage to share externally, and also downloads a copy. It's obviously very exciting stuff. There was no bad intent behind these actions, but there was also nothing in place to prevent her from doing that. So, or to kind of guide the process to stop her from being able to do that. Our second example shows a typical low and slow exfiltration behavior, attempting to steal information under the radar. This example is entirely malicious. It's usually carried out by people leaving the organization, moving data via email or uploading to personal storage or external drive over a long period of time is quite common and usually a hard one for most solutions to actually detect from a data loss prevention point of view.
I suppose I had a personal experience kind of relevant at this point maybe. So I went to an event recently and I had a QR code on an email. So I tried to access that on the Outlook app on my phone, and I was going to take a screenshot so I could access it more easily if I didn't have an internet connection later. Found that you actually stopped me taking screenshots from Outlook, which I didn't realise was a thing, but
clearly
we've got those policies in place which are for that very reason.
It could be sensitive information.
Yeah, no, good stuff.
So when thinking about Gen AI, data security risks are the same as any other data security risks, really. We have data exposure, data leaks, the concepts are the same, it's just the approaches that differ, and we need to find ways to reduce and mitigate those. So sensitive data that does not have robust permission management or protection can be open to users who should not be able to access it. This is not a new risk created by tools like Copilot. It's merely getting a spotlight because Copilot is 1,000 times faster than humans in terms of finding things that users should be able to find. A malicious user could take advantage of that overshared data, for example, to use Gen AI to discover information that's not easy to find. You wouldn't necessarily know what you're searching for, what you're typing into the search box, but typing into a prompt, Copilot would quite happily go away and find that in a matter of seconds. So just something to be aware of there as well. So once they've got access to that information, that could be leaked to the media or the press or even competitors for any sort of personal gain there. And lastly, a negligent user can accidentally share sensitive information with Gen AI applications such as Gemini or ChatGPT, making that sensitive information exposed to the public. Once you put those into the prompts of those tools, that then becomes training data for those LLMs. And as we mentioned earlier on, many organizations actually banned the use of Gen AI at the beginning because of those things like Samsung.
Yeah, well, it's still so new, isn't it? We're only sort of 2 or 3 years into really all these AI tools being available in the public domain. So people are still getting used to them, and yeah, inadvertent sharing is possible, definitely.
So we've got another scenario now around. Oh, it's lost control. So we can look at John and Alice. John leads working on a top secret project that only a few people know about. Alice is a project manager. She hears about it, but she's not actively working on that project, so no one shared any relevant files with her. She's curious to learn more, so she asks Copilot if they can help, basically finding the latest files and summarize the project. And since there was no access control or restrictions in place, Copilot was quite happy to go off and find files that Alice was able to have access to, build that summary together for her, and present her with that information. So this is a typical overexposure problem. It exists in a lot of organizations. Copilot is just highlighting that. Alice could have stopped there, but she's curious. So now she's seen the files. She wants to know what ChatGPT could summarize for her as well. So she copies and pastes content from those project documents into ChatGPT and also ask it to summarize it for her. Without realizing it, as I said, that information is now out in the public domain. It's part of the training data, and the next person that comes along to ask ChatGPT a question about either the company or that project will be able to get access to that information and have the answers as well. So again, it could result in bad PR, but yeah, effectively a data leakage scenario there for public.
Yeah, I know these aren't real people, but I'm starting to get worried about John and Alice now. Did they get in trouble?
Well, there's nothing malicious here in this instance, so no. But we will come back to them later on, as well as Jane as well, just to see how tools can help guide users and prevent these things from happening.
They've probably been sent on a training course, I imagine.
Let's hope so. So how can organisations get ahead of these challenges? Effectively, we need to understand the hidden risks to data, and it starts with getting visibility into what data you have, where it's located, and effectively how your users are interacting with that data. Without this visibility, you can't effectively protect that data. Once you have visibility into those risks, you have to look at a kind of a multi-layered approach, multi-layered controls to be able to protect it. You need to combine that data context with that user context so that you can create effective data loss prevention policies across the entire estate, whether that's on-prem or in the cloud. And there's not one size fits all. DLP policy, and that applies to DLP policies as well. It's very common to scope DLP policies to the most users, have fewer policies, target the whole organization. But what we find is a lot of organizations run those in audit-only mode, since they don't want to impede user productivity. And that sort of strategy will prevent the organization from being proactive and keeps them in the reactionary stage as well. And also, if a security incident happens, then we need to be able to identify that and be able to quickly respond to it and put measures in place to stop that happening again.
So I guess it's time to turn our attention to the technology available to help us.
And yeah, this is definitely where Microsoft Purview will help. It offers a comprehensive approach to secure and govern data. The suite of Purview products is designed around 3 pillars. to tackle security and compliance challenges for you across the organisation. So starting at the bottom, risk and compliance designed to manage the critical risks and help organisations align with regulatory requirements. Got data governance, which provides a set of tools aimed at data professionals like engineers, officers, and then obviously today's topic, data security, allows us to implement different layers of protection to secure data across its life cycle, and that's wherever that content lives. So data security is made up of data loss prevention, information protection, insider risk management, and information barriers. The first three provide an integrated set of tools which together can help you discover the risks, create effective policies, and quickly respond to and remediate any security incidents as well. The key is to use these solutions together so that it provides synergy across the platform rather than in individual point solutions that don't necessarily talk to each other or know what the other one is doing. For example, we can use information protection to classify SharePoint sites, teams, or apply protection such as access control or encryption to individual files. And that's protection that persists, as I said, regardless of where that content lives or gets moved to. Information protection also has the classification service, and we often use that to help find sensitive data both on-prem and in the cloud, including third-party apps like Salesforce, Google, Dropbox, etc. Another Purview feature is insider risk management. It's a solution that monitors users and the devices based on behavior and patterns there. So depending on the policies or rules we create, we can automatically assign a risk level to users. And combining these two with the DLP engine of Purview, we suddenly have quite a compelling solution that can protect data and stop it leaving the organization, either through email or a browser or external devices. But what makes it even more compelling is its ability to adapt. And one of the great things about Purview is the ability to balance data security and productivity by optimizing the data security automatically. Other platforms and competitors will require multiple agents to provide the same capability. With Purview, it's built in without the need for those agents to be deployed to devices. This is a solution that will allow you to be adaptive when it comes to DLP and based on the insider risk level. This allows different protection levels based on different risk levels. For example, we might have a minor risk user that only gets a policy tip. A moderate risk user may get blocked, but has the option to override, whereas a high risk user will simply be outright blocked and stopped in their tracks. So this protection also extends to entry conditional access and Purview data lifecycle management as well. So we can preserve data through retention or holds in a high-risk situation. This is a really powerful way to ensure that people can do what they need to do on a day-to-day basis, but have the peace of mind that restrictions will kick in as and when they're needed.
There's certainly aspects to Purview, isn't there? And a lot of people probably won't realise all those different elements that it can help secure.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of tools in the Purview toolbox. So with that in mind, we can think back to Jane Doe's case. How can companies protect their valuable data with an integrated security platform that offers defense in-depth protection? If we look, there were 5 key actions that Jane took. First, a large volume of IP was collected from multiple companies. If these companies had used Purview, they could have used the built-in trainable classifiers to detect the intellectual property automatically. This would have given visibility into sensitive or valuable data, whilst enforcing the policies to restrict access to specific users. Jane attempted to steal or exfiltrate files multiple times. Her actions would have been blocked by endpoint DLP, which monitors those channels for portable devices and things like that. The policies that were in place for company A did not actually raise any alerts. If they'd used a tool or an insider risk management solution, Jane could have been identified as a high-risk user early on, and those security teams would then have been able to analyse and her collective actions rather than just individual alerts. And back to the other two, or the other example here, so back to these two, this could also have been prevented. Firstly, having robust data hygiene practices is key, and that's something that we do advocate across the board. John didn't set up proper permissions for his documents, basically leaving the team open to everyone inside the organisation. No sensitivity labels were applied, so an auto-labeling policy or library level defaults would have classified that content accordingly, adding another layer of protection of access controls without the need for user involvement. So again, if that content is moved somewhere else, if it's protected at the document level, then the permissions persist rather than relying on membership to a team or access to a SharePoint site. Since neither of those were in place and Copilot inherits a user's access, when Alice asked Copilot to summarize the project, it was able to surface that information on her behalf. And finally, if endpoint DLP policies have been in place to block users from pasting sensitive content into ChatGPT, which then in turn becomes part of the LLM's training data, we could have prevented that from actually leaving the organisation and ending up as training data too.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, you've covered an awful lot there in a short space of time, haven't you? I suppose these are our key takeaways. Actually, before I go through these, if there's any more questions people would like to ask on anything Iain's covered today, we've got a couple of questions already come in, I can see. But yeah, any more, please drop them in the chat now. I suppose these are the key things that I think we'd like everyone to perhaps come away from this session thinking about. Thinking about the risks that affect your organization. You'll know your users obviously better than we do. There are data security checks that you can perform, so that those tools that we've looked at, they're available to help you, so why not use them? But you might just need a bit of help getting started on that if you're not clear on how to use Purview and its full capabilities. And ultimately, if you can create a strategy, if you don't already have your data security strategy in place, then it would be a good time to look at that. But we can help you through this if you need help, so I don't think you're alone. We've created a kind of data security engagement, a small consultancy engagement that we can help our customers kind of go through some of these processes. It's actually based on a Microsoft standard, and it's something that we can offer to help you define that data strategy for your organization. So this does use Purview to help you do that. And if you don't already have the licenses in place to support that, don't worry, there's a trial license basically that's delivered as part of the engagement. And then the outcome of that engagement is a series of recommendations and some next steps to put those kind of things in place you've talked about to make you more secure. It takes a few working days to deliver over a month or so. So it's not a big commitment, but can be a really, really useful thing to do. And the potential really good news on this is that Microsoft will fund this for eligible organizations as well. So potentially you could go through this process without any cost to your organization. So if anyone's interested, we can provide a bit more information around that. So yeah, we'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to help you with these things as well. I mentioned this will become a series, so we've obviously looked at kind of internal data security more on this session. We're going to turn our attention to external threat protection next time. So we're going to look at your approach to cybersecurity. Hopefully make sure you don't get those kind of cyber attacks that we saw happening in the news earlier on. And so looking at all of the different threats that may affect you across different information types and channels, and then really exploring the vulnerabilities that you might have in your environment. So starting to prepare that one now for the delivery later in the year. Okay, I can see we've got a couple of questions. Firstly, the licensing level required to use Purview, Iain, perhaps you could just explain that one, please.
So yeah, you need a ME plan, Microsoft Enterprise, 365 Enterprise, the either E3, E5. Obviously E5 gives you everything in the toolbox. E3 you get some capabilities, that's the same for Business Premium as well. So if you have either of those plans, you can do some of the stuff, but there are there is the ability to have the security bundle add-on if you want all of the tools in the toolbox without necessarily stepping up to a full E5 license if you don't need everything in that suite. So yeah, at least Microsoft 365 E3, Business Premium or E5.
Great, thanks for clarifying. Question on how can you ensure third-party suppliers comply with the AI policy? What level of control can we have over third-party suppliers?
So I guess if that's partners or suppliers working inside your tenant, obviously the controls that you put in place will be controlling the content inside of your tenancy. And as I said, the sensitivity labels that you can apply to individual files will persist wherever that file is. So again, if you've applied a policy that means it's got access control on it, then obviously that will be that will persist. I'm just thinking about the implications of the device management and things around endpoint DLP, where there are options inside of the DLP policies. Yeah, I think it ultimately would depend on various scenarios and how those people are connecting, but there are definitely options to help protect that data with people that work for you, but not necessarily on your devices or inside your ecosystem fully.
Great, thank you. This is a good question. Is Copilot safer than ChatGPT? Maybe I'll start by giving the layman's answer, and then you can fill in the gaps from a technical perspective, because we talked about this a lot on our Copilot webinar series. So yes, Copilot should be safer because everything is grounded in your organizational data. So it's not leaving, your Microsoft tenant into the public domain, whereas typically if you search something on ChatGPT, your prompt is suddenly in the outside world and it's being queried by the large language model, right?
Exactly, yeah. So Copilot will restrict that learning to your organization and the data that it finds. And again, if you've got a robust permission model in place, Copilot will use that to kind of do stuff on the user's behalf. So you shouldn't have access to the data, therefore Copilot shouldn't find it for you. But again, the way that Copilot trains is all based on your data, and it's segregated from everyone else across Microsoft stack as well.
Yeah, and we can share some more information from our Copilot series if you're interested as well. And someone's asked if the presentation will be shared. Yes, well, a recording of this session will be shared. So if you would like to share it with colleagues, then please do. We'll follow up after the event with a link to the recording. Well, I think that's all from us. So thanks for your insight, Iain. It's been really, really useful today. Really enjoyed the session, and looking forward to the next one now, threat protection. So thanks for you all for being here as well. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you, and hope you have a good rest of your day.